After Yoshinobu Shimogori died, engineers opened a door that should have never been sealed. What they found inside isn't just history, it's the blueprint for a revolution already in motion. Stay with this video until the end because this changes how we think about invention and legacy. The man no one could categorize. Yoshinobu Shimogori wasn't famous. He wasn't a billionaire. He never gave interviews, never launched a startup, and never went viral. But among the engineers who whispered his name in patent offices and research labs, he was a legend. Some said he was a recluse who built wind turbines that spun without wind. Others swore he had cracked perpetual motion. Most simply called him that Japanese guy who vanished. His official records were unremarkable. Born in 1947 in Hiroshima, trained in mechanical engineering, disappeared from the public eye in the late 1980s. He filed fewer than 10 patents in his name, but those who studied them closely said each one felt like a fragment of something bigger, something hidden. Shimogori wasn't chasing wealth. He was chasing the truth. Those who met him described a quiet man who never used smartphones, never drove cars, and always carried a notebook. He scribbled constantly, in diners, at bus stops, even during conversations. He once corrected a Boeing engineer's math on the back of a receipt and walked away before giving his name. The engineer never forgot him. Yet despite these anecdotes, no one really knew where he lived or what he was building. Not until his death in early 2024 from heart failure. He died alone in a one-bedroom home outside Kyoto. No heirs, no will. Just a single key found in a metal box beside his bed, engraved with a number and an address. That key opened the garage, and what lay inside wasn't a workbench or a car. It was the opening move in one of the greatest technological mysteries of our time. But the garage itself, that first look, was its own kind of revelation. If this is blowing your mind already, hit like and drop a comment if you think Shimogori's work should be released or kept locked away. The locked garage. The garage sat on the outskirts of an industrial zone in Kyoto, nestled behind a crumbling facade and a rusted sign that read, "Tomioka Tool and Storage." No one had paid it much attention in decades. The surrounding buildings had either been torn down or repurposed, but this one remained untouched, almost like it was waiting. When authorities first approached the site, they expected a dusty workshop, maybe some old tools and forgotten prototypes. But the building was sealed tighter than expected. Reinforced steel shutters covered the windows. A biometric pad, decades ahead of consumer tech, guarded the main door. They had to consult a retired locksmith and 2 robotics experts just to override it. The moment the door creaked open, they were hit not by dust, but by climate control. The air was filtered, dry, and faintly metallic. Fluorescent lights flickered to life without being prompted. The space was immaculate. No cobwebs, no grime, just silence, and a strange humming sense of anticipation. Inside, the garage stretched deeper than expected, far past what the exterior suggested. Rows of covered objects lined the walls. Shelving units held sealed crates, each labeled only with hand-scrawled numbers and ideograms. In one corner, a workbench had been frozen in time, tools laid out with impossible precision, wires coiled in tight spirals, a soldering iron still resting on its cradle. The most unsettling detail? A calendar on the back wall, dated May of 2009. One date was circled in red, no other markings, no explanation, and right below it, pinned neatly, was a note in Yoshinobu's own handwriting. It read, "Not yet," and just a few steps from that calendar, under a tarp and surrounded by cables, was a shape no one could explain. We've listed our favorite engineering gear, tools, and books down in the description, exactly what real creators still use. The impossible engine. They didn't know it was an engine at first. It didn't look like one. No combustion chamber, no fuel line, no recognizable moving parts. It sat on a pedestal, connected to what looked like a control panel made from custom circuitry. The casing was a matte silver alloy, curved like a seashell and entirely seamless. No bolts, no seams, no entry points. But it was warm. A physics professor called in to consult on the object muttered 3 words under his breath the moment he touched the panel. This isn't possible. Inside the control panel, investigators found logs. Dozens of startup cycles, test sessions, and output readings, each one suggesting that the device had run for hours on end under simulated load. And yet, the power input was negligible. No external generator, no wall socket, just ambient heat reclaimed and redirected. A thermal feedback loop so efficient it bordered on violation of the second law of thermodynamics. thermodynamics. One page from Yoshinobu's notes, written in careful block lettering, contained a sentence that would haunt the research team for weeks. Energy is not created, it is remembered. The more they examined the device, the more questions emerged. Why hadn't he submitted this to a scientific journal? Why was it buried under tarps in an unmarked garage? And why did every reading suggest that the machine was designed to power itself, not perpetually but close enough to rewrite the rules? No diagrams, no replication instructions, just one red button marked, "Do not start." No one pushed it. But just when the team began to catalog the engine, someone leaned against the back wall, and it shifted. The secret compartment. It was almost missed. A faint click sounded from a panel at the rear of the garage, what looked like part of the foundation. But then it shifted. A hidden staircase revealed itself, steep and narrow, constructed from reinforced polymer. Step by step, they descended. This wasn't a basement. It was a bunker. Matte black walls lined with anti-static film absorbed the light from motion-triggered LEDs. At the end of the hall stood a sealed door which opened into a cockpit-like chamber. Inside, a central workstation surrounded by analog monitors, vertical file drawers, and a floor-level vault. Inside that vault were hardbound notebooks, each marked with symbols instead of words. The diagrams inside were strange. Vehicles without wheels, processors shaped like tetrahedrons, propulsion blueprints powered by something labeled only EF photographs showed machines hovering inches off the ground, dated as early as 1978. Then came a soft hum from behind the last door. Something was still alive, and what was humming in the dark was not from this world. The forgotten blueprints. Tucked into the far right drawer of a built-in cabinet, the blueprints were arranged with unsettling precision. Dozens of tightly rolled sheets bound in red string. Some were yellowed, others pristine. None bore stamps, patents, or corporate marks. These designs had never left the room. The drawings were intricate, rendered in ink, pencil, even charcoal. One showed a turbine with Mobius-shaped blades. Another resembled a skeletal, wearable device with notes pointing to nerve clusters. They weren't just conceptual, they were complete. An engineer from Osaka University spent hours reviewing a series labeled Genkei. His verdict was whispered but seismic. This could replace the entire electric motor industry. But what shocked them most were the dates, 1979 to 1987. Many of these innovations wouldn't appear commercially for another 20 years. Shimogori didn't patent them. He didn't share them. They were finished and hidden. One note in the margins read, "Some things must wait until the world can carry them without falling." But not all of Shimogori's work was technical. Some of it was personal, and that was where the story truly turned. The names he never mentioned. Inside a cardboard box marked only with the kanji for wind, investigators found bundles of envelopes, journals, and letters, some dating back nearly 40 years. None were addressed to family or government institutions. Instead, they were written to people who, on the surface, meant nothing to the historical record. First names only, often accompanied by photos, rough sketches, or even fingerprints. One letter, dated 1982, was addressed simply to Hina. It included a drawing of a mechanical toy and a note that read, "When your hands are strong enough to hold this, build something better than I ever could." Another longer note was addressed to Martin, a factory technician in Stuttgart who Shimogori had met during a month-long apprenticeship. He thanked Martin for lending him a wrench in the rain. "The smallest tools leave the deepest grooves," he wrote. Some letters reference local artisans, laborers, street performers, and retired engineers. In one, he included a detailed diagram of a hand-powered irrigation device and instructed its recipient to use this for the community garden. And if it works, never tell anyone it was mine. Historians were baffled. These weren't collaborators. They weren't famous. Most didn't even have surnames. But woven through the messages was a picture of a man who found value in anonymity, who gifted knowledge to the world one person at a time, never keeping a record of what he gave. Many of the letters were never sent. Some were water-stained or marked with revision notes, as if he had reconsidered even the act of communication. Yet the emotional weight was undeniable. Shimogori hadn't just built machines, he had built quiet relationships and then let them go. But there was one thing he never let go. One machine stayed locked behind glass, untouched and unnamed. The machine he never shared. It sat beneath a dome of impact-resistant polycarbonate, clear, cold, intimidating. The machine was unlike anything else in the garage. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't intuitive, it was brutal. 3 massive arms extended from a central sphere which pulsed faintly with a blue glow. The housing was reinforced with an alloy that resisted heat and magnetism. Cables the width of a human wrist connected the device to an external unit that appeared to be a power stabilizer, except the stabilizer wasn't wired to anything. It, too, was humming. Experts were called in to examine it. Aerospace engineers, quantum theorists, even former defense contractors. No one could identify the purpose. Some said it was a propulsion engine. Others thought it might be an energy dispersal node. One analyst theorized it was capable of short-burst gravity manipulation. The blue glow was not decorative. It flickered in pulses, precisely timed like a heartbeat. Yoshinobu had labeled the device with only one word, Yurei. In Japanese, it means ghost. The notebook associated with the machine was thinner than the rest. No design sketches, only short, fragmented thoughts. One page read, "Built to move, not forward, not back, out." Another, "Do not let them test it. They will not understand what it costs." There were rumors, half whispers from scientists who had once worked in Shimogori's orbit. They said he had been pressured in the late 80s by a foreign consortium to commercialize his more radical ideas. He declined. Shortly after, he vanished from their radar. He kept the Yurei prototype sealed for a reason. He never tested it in front of anyone. And maybe that was because even he feared what it might do. But Yurei had a file, and the file had a number, a patent number that no longer existed. The patent that disappeared. In a drawer labeled with the Roman numeral 7, archivists uncovered a wax-wrapped folder containing a typed patent application. Filed in 1989 under the name Y. Shimogori, it was titled Closed-Loop Kinetic Reactor with Adaptive Yield. The documentation was complete, schematics, equations, and use cases for scalable clean propulsion. But something didn't add up. The patent had been accepted, then abruptly withdrawn 6 weeks later. No objections, no correspondence, just a handwritten note. Application retracted at inventor's request. When investigators checked digital records, the entry had been scrubbed. Only the physical copy remained, erased from public trace. Engineers who reviewed the file were stunned. If real, the design could eclipse current powertrain systems in both torque and efficiency. The implications stretched from aerospace to defense. So why kill it? A newspaper clipping offered a clue. A mysterious factory fire in central China that same month, killing 3 of Shimogori's former collaborators. Attached was a note. Some things are better buried. And if Shimogori had buried this, what else had he hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the wrong hands to find it? The first offer. The first offer came 48 hours after the discovery of the Yurei machine leaked to a private industrial archive. It was a sealed envelope hand-delivered to the legal executor of Shimogori's estate. No logos, no signature. Just an offer typed on heavyweight paper and signed in red ink. The number was staggering. $9 billion for full exclusive rights to the contents of the garage, including all physical materials, diagrams, recordings, and unpublished notes. No questions asked. The buyer would assume liability, transport, and any future developments. In short, total silence in exchange for generational wealth. The offer originated from a tech conglomerate based in San Francisco, one known publicly for cloud computing and logistics, but privately rumored to fund black box research into next-generation defense and autonomous energy. The company's spokesperson, when pressed by journalists, denied any involvement, but one email leaked by a junior analyst said otherwise. "This is our shot at total infrastructure dominance. We lose it, we're just another vendor." The estate, still in legal limbo, didn't respond, but word spread, and within days more offers arrived. Telecoms, aerospace firms, crypto-backed consortiums offering ridiculous valuations for even partial access to Shimogori's work. One group suggested dividing the inventions into categories and auctioning each one off to the highest bidder. "Legacy is a luxury," the email read. "The market is what matters." No one asked what Yoshinobu would have wanted. They just wanted a piece of what he left behind. But while corporations lined up to claim history, those closest to him were coming apart at the seams. And what began as a legal formality soon fractured into something far more personal and poisonous. The family rift. Shimogori had no direct descendants, no spouse, no legally recognized heirs. But that didn't stop the relatives from arriving. Nieces, nephews, cousins, twice removed, all with paperwork, all with stories of long-forgotten bonds. Some claimed to have shared tea with him a decade ago. Others said they'd received gifts as children and that these gestures indicated inheritance. Most had never seen the garage. None understood what it contained. Within a week, the executor of the estate was juggling 27 competing claims. What had once been a mysterious archive of genius was quickly turning into a feeding frenzy. At the center of the storm were two opposing philosophies. On one side, family members who saw the garage as a global gift, something that should be handed to a public trust or museum. On the other, those who argued that Shimogori's brilliance should be capitalized, monetized, licensed, and converted into generational wealth. "We were left the key," one relative said during a deposition. "He wanted us to decide what it was worth." But there was no consensus, just pressure. Lawyers circled like vultures. Documents were forged, allegiances shifted. At one point, two cousins got into a physical altercation outside the Kyoto courthouse, one holding a portrait of Yoshinobu, the other gripping a mock-up of a licensing contract. The executor issued a statement. "This estate is not a marketplace. It is a matter of historical and cultural importance." No one listened. Behind closed doors, threats were exchanged. Rumors of bribes, payoffs, even sabotage began to circulate. And while the family fought, international attention turned toward the garage, and with it, political interest. Because what started as a battle over inheritance was about to become a matter of national security. The international inquiry. The inquiry began quietly. On Monday, Japan's Ministry of Internal Affairs requested a full review of Shimogori's garage, citing national intellectual asset concerns. But by midweek, the silence shattered. The U.S. Embassy requested access. By Friday, Germany, South Korea, and Australia filed their own petitions, each warning of potential defense and infrastructure implications. A leaked European Commission report likened the discovery to an undiscovered Manhattan project. Another warned of unknown effects on global energy grids. In short, if Shimogori's work functioned, it could upend energy systems and trigger a geopolitical arms race. Japan responded by locking the garage down. State police secured the site. Drones patrolled the airspace. "We cannot let this fall into the wrong hands," said a cabinet official. But no one agreed on what the right hands were. Amid the chaos and posturing, one letter was quietly found, addressed not to a government but to a man no one had yet named. And that man had once meant everything to Shimogori until silence split them apart. The letter to a lost friend. It was handwritten, folded twice. The ink had bled slightly in the corners as if exposed to water. Tucked into the final drawer of the lab beneath a metal casing marked "Private, Do Not Open" was a single envelope addressed in soft cursive to Kenji. There was no last name, no address. But inside was a message, raw, careful, and far more revealing than any schematic. Shimogori's letter was not technical. It was personal, a confession wrapped in apology. He wrote about failure, about the exhaustion of being years ahead of a world still obsessed with combustion engines and fossil fuel margins. "I could not wait for them to catch up," he wrote, "and I could not stand to watch them steal what they did not understand." Kenji, it turns out, was once a collaborator, a childhood friend. They had co-designed early iterations of the thermal engine together before parting ways in the early 80s after a disagreement over military licensing. Kenji had wanted to share the invention, to democratize energy. Shimogori refused. "When they see light, they ask how to weaponize it," he wrote, "and I could not live with that outcome." The letter ended with a quiet heartbreak. "You were right. They are not ready, but maybe they never will be, and maybe that's why I built it alone." Investigators believe Kenji passed away years earlier. The letter was never sent, but its existence reframed everything. Shimogori hadn't vanished out of pride or paranoia. He vanished because he could not bear to see his work corrupted. And that decision, to stay hidden, to build in silence, was both his greatest act of protection. The market shifts. It started with a shockwave through global commodities markets. Within 72 hours of confirmed reports that Yoshinobu Shimogori's garage contained post-fossil fuel technology, crude oil futures plunged 12%. Natural gas followed, dropping 8%. In a single trading session, energy giants that had ruled the world for decades lost billions in market value. And that was only the beginning. Emergency meetings broke out across energy conglomerates. PR departments issued half-hearted statements about commitment to innovation innovation and long-term resilience, but investors weren't convinced. They weren't afraid of competition, they were afraid of extinction. If Shimogori's tech worked, it wouldn't just disrupt the industry, it would vaporize it. Tech sectors responded with chaos. German automakers issued cryptic statements about thermal architecture evaluations. Meanwhile, a little-known Norwegian startup saw a 400% surge for vaguely referencing pre-Shimogori kinetics. Panic became a business model. Venture capitalists, sensing opportunity, rushed to buy obscure patents and microlabs. Startups with even a whisper of similarity to Shimogori's work were flooded with funding. The economy detached from facts. Speculation became its own marketplace. At the center of this financial storm sat Japan, praised as the birthplace of a revolution, yet teetering under the weight of global instability no one could fully contain. Because if the markets were shocked, the political system was about to detonate. The political fallout. The first legislative hearing on Shimogori's discoveries was expected to be routine, but it quickly spiraled into chaos. Lawmakers shouted accusations of negligence, cover-ups, and even treason. One representative slammed his fist on the table, demanding to know how such transformative work had been buried. This wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a betrayal of the future, he said. Analysts compared the uproar to the aftermath of the first nuclear tests. Behind the scenes, intelligence agencies scrambled. At least 2 foreign governments had already attempted to breach Japan's servers to access Shimogori's files. Meanwhile, citizen groups demanded transparency, accusing officials of protecting corporate interests. "You don't hide the cure to a burning house," one protester said. With every option risky and no clear solution, a new voice began to rise. Not from the top, but from the people, because when power stalls at the top, it often rises from below. The consumers who fought back. They weren't CEOs or world leaders, they were garage engineers, retired electricians, open-source coders, and anonymous tinkerers, people long ignored by mainstream science. But when fragments of Shimogori's blueprints leaked online, illegally and without attribution, they didn't hesitate. Within 2 weeks, decentralized networks formed with a single mission: rebuild Shimogori's work and make it freely available to all. One forum, called the Ghost Circuit, quickly became the global nucleus for translating, decoding, and simulating the designs. Contributors from over 40 countries worked around the clock, dissecting the diagrams and proposing safe, small-scale experiments. A Canadian group claimed partial ignition from a low-temperature thermal loop. An Indian team mapped Shimogori's VTOW system to modern battery architecture. This wasn't about money, it was about memory. One São Paulo volunteer put it plainly: "If we don't open this, someone will lock it, and the world will lose it again." Governments issued takedown orders, corporations sent cease and desists, but it was like trying to stop a flood with a broom. Every time a site was shuttered, 2 more went live. This movement wasn't centralized, it couldn't be crushed. Supporters grew. Former colleagues shared stories. Journalists connected the dots. The message was clear. Shimogori had hidden the tech not to hoard it, but to protect it. Then something new emerged. A final file. Unexpected, undeniably his. It was not a blueprint, not a letter, but a voice, and it spoke from beyond the grave. Still watching? Then you're one of us. Subscribe now. We're just getting to the part they tried to erase from history. The last tape. The file was discovered on a magnetic reel stored inside a lead-lined case buried behind a panel beneath the Uri device. It had been overlooked for weeks, mistaken for shielding, but once decoded and digitized, it revealed something no one anticipated. A video. It opened with static, then silence. Then the face of Yoshinobu Shimogori, older, gaunt, but alert. He sat in his lab behind the same desk, now surrounded by investigators. The recording time stamped to 2008. "I don't know who you are," he said, "and I don't know if you'll understand any of this, but I built everything with the hope that someday someone would." His voice was steady, but weary. Over the next 9 minutes, he walked through his motivations. Not his formulas, not his engineering breakthroughs, but the reasons. The loneliness of being too early, the fear of abuse, the guilt of inaction. "I have been visited by companies, by governments, by people who wanted to use these designs for things I could never allow," he said. "So I disappeared. Not because I had nothing left to give, but because I wasn't ready to watch it all be taken. He spoke about Kenji, about regret, about the moment he almost destroyed it all but chose instead to preserve it, just in case someone better came along. Then he looked directly into the camera and said one final thing. If you're watching this, you found the pieces. You have the choice I never trusted the world to make. Do not repeat my silence, but do not rush either. Let the world earn it. The screen faded to black. And for the first time since the garage was unlocked, there was no noise, only clarity, only choice, and the world listened. Shimogori's story changed everything. One man, one garage, and the world holding its breath. But while the past left us a warning, the future's already roaring to life. Suzuki just revealed 5 new motorcycles, and they're about to flip the whole industry on its head. If you're still here, you're the reason we tell these stories. Like, comment, and subscribe, and then tap into what comes next.